Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. Public teaching in English for Monday, March 26, 2018. And today we have Lisa McDonald with us, Exploring Plasma Science, Part 7. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, Flint. Thanks for hosting me today. And this is our last public workshop in this Exploring Plasma series. And hopefully at a future point we will start some more again, but this will be our last one. And to do our last one, we're going to do a soul session today. And so I've prepared a video for you that I had created from some of Mr. Keshe's work. And once we have watched it, we will discuss the topic that he has brought forward and see if we can get a bit more understanding on the cycle of creation and what it means to us as humanity and human beings and our souls on this planet. So, Flint, would you please play the video for us? Thanks.
Yes.
Flint, can you take the captions off?
Understanding is very simple.
I apologize for that.
The process of understanding is very simple. The process is, as I explained last time, I explained more in detail. We are created out of the rays within the center of the universe. In interaction and reduction in strength and division by the strength in certain strength fields, in collection of the totality of the expansion of the universe, some energies, some dynamic fields have come together. Over billions of years, these fields lead to the creation of what we call the soul. Where the plasma gathers together. The same process repeats again because the sun is the same as the energy center of the universe. Now, the heavier, the larger amount of the energy which is collected in this span of the universe, we call the sun, that irradiates out, does the same thing again. Radiates its fields out, and in interaction with the itself, with the fields of itself, leads to creation of planet. In that process of the creation of planet, the same process happens again. In the interaction of the fields of the earth with its environment and cooling and exchange with the strength of the other things in the environment of the space of the solar system, leads to creation of man, cell, matter state. And that itself, in coming together and slowing down in certain ways, as we call, leads to another sun. We call the soul of the man. This is the truth about the life and creation of the man. But if the soul of the man can understand and absorb and be correct with his conduct, he can become the strength of the fields and carry the strength of the field of the planet which came to this creation. And if the soul can understand with the same process, can interact, can be correct, can absorb with itself the totality of the strength of what it needs, he shall become the sun. And then the same soul has the energy that it can absorb within the solar system, within the galaxy, shall become the center of the universe. Earth, we call it the rain, come from and goes back to. Solar system, we call it planetary system. We come from the rays, we become the planet, and we go back to the mother. The same thing happens with the galaxies, with the solar systems, which they get absorbed back in and they chewed up back in the universe. The life, the process of existence in the universe is the same. It doesn't matter on what exchange and what extent. So, what is the man fighting for? Why do we fight for something which has come from the point of the creation, and in the process it goes back to the creation? The soul of the man, as the energy of the earth, gives the face of the man, the face of the earth, and that process is the same for the soul of the man. Our soul, in reduction in strength, in interaction with the emotion of the field of the environment, leads to manifestation of the existence of the man. But once it's completed, does it need the face? Or can it be and becomes free from it, what we call the soul of the man, be free and detached from its existence? Our soul is part of the process of the creation. The key to one question who man shall be in the future to be answered. As we saw the sun became the earth, and as we saw the earth became man's soul, what will be the destiny of the soul of the man now becomes free at the point of departure from physicality. Would it become the sun for creation of another life, or many lives, or correction of lives? This shall be, and this is how it happens. When you create a soul which is not correct, which is misconduct by itself, cannot give, you lead to the creation of this next cycle of creation, which has started the wrong way, the wrong strength. This is one thing the man has never understood. You become the creator of another universe, another cycle. And this is what you have to judge within the structure of the soul of the man. What would I like that cycle to be? In the physical life, we create children. In the dimension of the life of the soul of the man, what that soul will create. If man has thought up to now, that's it, my end, my point, when I die is finished, there's as much fallacy that when the sun is destroyed in any shape or form, there shall be nothing left. But we know the part of the sun becomes part of the galaxy and becomes part of new life. So shall be the soul of the man. The judgment of the man has to be according to what he sees the future his soul can conduct to be. The day of judgment is for the man, not in front of the Creator. That what my soul judges to be and what shall create. Man never understood and shall never understand till can solve this dilemma within itself. The reality is very, very, very real. And that is, as we've seen, the energy of the galaxy become the sun, the energy of the sun has become the earth, and the energy of the earth has become the soul of the man. So shall be the soul of the man, which is the energy itself, another cycle of life. How can you change when you don't understand? How can you change the process of understanding if you do not understand the process of the creation? Do we need to extend the understanding of the man that what is the future he brings? We care about our children, what education they get, what they wear, how happy they'll be, where they sleep. Now the man has to be careful and consider, what life shall my soul create? Because those are the children of your soul. As we see, the rays of the sun has become a planet and 7 billion children of it. 7 billion unlimited, which is growing. So the soul of the man will go through the same process. How many billions and subdivisions and sub-material state of the physicality of the man your soul shall create? Would it be the soul of wars and conflict and forever killing? Or would it be the soul of this, let's say, solar system, which is peaceful? This is the truth and the reality about the soul of the man. First of all, as I said many times recently, we never understood that the soul of the man is within the structure of the man. And now that we understood, we understand on departure from the physicality of the man, the same process will carry on as it did for a star, a planet, and the soul of the man becomes another energy source, a higher order, which itself leads to the creation. It becomes the star, it becomes the center of a new cycle of creation. This is what the human race has to understand. The cycle actually starts from the point of death and not finishes at the point of death. In so many ways, if one understands, is as the dusts, specks of dust came together to make the earth in the solar system, so has the specks of the atoms has come to be the creator of the man. And the essence of the creation of the specks of dust on the solar system has led to the creation of the man. So shall be the fields from the soul of the man which lead to creation of another cycle of life. What kind of life man would like to have to be created by his soul? This is the day of judgment. This is what man never understood. Now you have to understand. You have no choice. Up to today you were not aware of it. From today you are aware of it. You are responsible for it. Your conduct has to be to elevate your soul. That in elevating the soul, what you become the creator of stands correct in the conduct of the citizens. We don't give fairy tale. This is the truth. But as you've seen, the process does not stop with one sun. The cycle carries on. It's very interesting in how humanity now knows in fact to handle the fact. It'll take decades for man to understand, and then you understand those who become the tools of war, the tools of conflict. They have less, they have nothing to start with. They have to become the dust in the solar system of the others till the day they learn more, as they cannot create a new cycle through their own soul. This is the elevation of the soul of the man. To be part of the creation of a beautiful life for the next cycle. When you don't have it, you have to become another cell in the body of the structure of the bigger, for you to be just there that you can done when you could have been the soul of the man. They say, do not create fear. I give you the point of love for creation. If you cared about your children on this planet to have the best, your true children come out of your own soul in the coming time. How would you like to educate them? How would you like to be when you are in conflict with yourself and the cause of so much mayhem? This is the truth. And the man will take a long time to understand, as now that we understand the soul of the man is an operator for the creation of the future extent of the life of the man. Whatever is gathered by the soul at the end becomes his point of reference of his own creation, of his own dimension. But the strangest thing is, what he creates from his soul shall become the creator of the other souls. This is the beauty about the creation, and one understands it, understands no limitation.
That was wonderful, Lisa.
Thanks for playing it, Flint. My bandwidth never would have handled it. And so thank you. And yes, it was not perfect, not as perfect as I would have liked, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I love being creative. So I hope that it helped some people kind of get the message, and maybe we can discuss and figure out the cycle of creation for ourselves, and maybe do a little pulling apart of that clip and what people understood from it. So can anybody open up with any question or discussion?
Yes, John.
Good morning to you all. Or good evening for you, Lisa. This, I think, is a resume of the whole of what we're learning. It's the epitome, isn't it?
Well, that was my understanding. I think if we can get a handle on this and what it really means, then we might actually understand everything. So.
Yes, we just got to listen to it at least 5 times, I think, and really catch the gist of it. Because every single word has a significance, and a very deep one. It's fantastic. I think it's well worth having the original video and being able to translate it to the different languages and have the people see this and try to comprehend it.
We are going to try and do that, John. I'm going to try and get a blank so that we can put in the language translations instead of trying to play them over English, because I think it might be a bit confusing like that.
Yeah, Mr. Keshe's voice could be a bit more on a background, but still listening to his voice and the soul behind it. And having it in different languages, I think this would be beautiful. So people can really get the hang of what all of us are trying to get through to them.
And so what did you actually understand from this, John?
Oh, I think I've understood the whole thing. What do we come here for? To generate a new universe. If we really get the real meaning of what we'll come down here for. Every one of us has to generate a new universe.
Anybody else? Must I just put this on a loop and I can leave now?
Yeah, I can do that too. Yeah, certainly could be possible.
Jim was saying he wants to watch it every morning when he gets up. Give him some inspiration for the day.
I think we've all got this message through, and that's why I said it would be very interesting to have it in the different languages, which I think if everybody listens to this and really gets the gist of the meaning, they'll come through and hook on to our bus, so let's put it this way, and continue studying the real meaning of what the plasma science is.
in terms of the different cycles of the soul and, you know, how we do harm to ourselves by adding the violence and the negativity versus, you know, the other way. I think it also explains that quite well, and why we should be looking at other ways to do things and get out of the cycle of violence that we're in.
Yeah, I see. Every time we go down a side street, we've always got to try and go back to the main street, because if not, we get lost and forget or lose our real objective. And if we don't see our real objective, I think this can open our eyes to be able to do so.
To me, this was one of the pivotal teachings that got me to understand, and that's why I thought it was so important as to how things work, because it doesn't matter whether it's an atom or the center of the universe. It all has a soul, it all has a center, and it's just a different kind of universe. And it all depends whether you further away or closer, or you know where you're going and where you've come from and where you're going back to. That we all are part of that cycle.
I see. It's not a different universe. It's just as it is above, it's down below. It's all the same. It repeats itself continually. We've just got to put our own small part to continue with this cycle.
Yes, Jalal.
Hi, Flint. Hi, everyone. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jalal. Sorry, I muted myself there.
It's okay. I have a little bit here disruption, but from what I understand from this beautiful, beautiful video, what you made here is very powerful and very beautiful. So you are in all situation, you are responsible for what is coming out from you. Is it soul level or emotion level or even the matter level?
Yeah, I think we have to start taking responsibility there, Jalal, in everything we do.
Yes, it is.
Anybody else? Please raise your hands. Katya, I see you have a question you wrote in Q&A. Do you want to read it? You have a mic.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello, Katya.
So could it be that every plant we put in earth is also a child from us, our soul? Or is it more what our soul creates by wishing to bring a change to elevate others?
You know, to me, everything around us we're connected to. So whether it's directly our child or whether it's somebody else's child, it actually makes no difference, because we're all part of the same creator. So, you know, yes, we are directly responsible for whatever comes out of us, but we also are responsible for everything else around us, because it all comes from the same source and we're all part of each other. And so we have to treat everything as if it is part of us.
Yeah, that's very heavy for the reason because eating something is to harm someone.
You know, this is the hard part. You know, eventually, do we get to the stage where we don't even want to put our foot down to squash the ant? You know.
Mm.
You don't even want to squash a grain of sand.
True, John.
The difference, I think, though, is there's a pretty major echo coming through in there. Okay. The difference, I think, is whether you consciously are crushing the ant or crushing other beings. Because if we see an ant in our path, for example, it's pretty easy to step to the side a little bit, or, you know, we don't necessarily have to crush the ant. It may get crushed if we don't see it, or it's just in, you know, and part of ordinary life or whatever. But if we see the ant and we deliberately go out, like many kids do, for example, and deliberately crush the ant, that's a different perspective. That's a different dimension than avoiding stepping on the ant.
And this brings in more responsibility that you don't walk, you fly.
But then you're bumping into birds. And the birds have trouble, so it's the same deal. It's the idea is that don't harm others deliberately. That's the whole thing. If you're conscious of your environment, truly conscious of yourself in your environment, then you'll be aware of all the life forms pretty much. I mean, it's hard to avoid, you know, bacteria killing, involuntarily killing bacteria and so on. But I think the idea is that not to deliberately, the first step is not to deliberately reach out and touch something like that. I mean, as children, we tend to do that. And even as adults, there's, you know, if there's ants all over your house, then you tend to want to get rid of them any way you can. It can drive you crazy. But on the other hand, if you're just walking down your path and you happen to see an ant, you know, perhaps with previous conditioning, you've had, you know, ants totally infest your life so many times, it's caused so much grief and so much pain and suffering and so on, that maybe you would jump out and step on it just from kind of spite in a way. But that's because of our conditioning. Normally, you know, if we had our compassion functioning, we wouldn't be deliberately causing the end of life forms, I don't think.
You know, just in the last 6 months, Rick, you know, we've had infestations by tadpoles in our growing systems for our lettuce, and which have eaten all the lettuce roots, and then we don't have any harvest. And, you know, and you get so fed up and you get so demoralized because, you know, nature's just, you're up against it all the time. But on the same token, then you have to start understanding that we need to create conditions. So if we start working with the plasma and create conditions and environments where, let's say, in your house, you can create a condition with your plasma that the ants don't really want to live here because the condition isn't right. So we're not going to bother them too much because they just don't come in, and we don't have to kill them then. So it's a kind of a different approach. It's the same with the plants and the bugs coming to eat the plants. You spray the bugs, but you have to understand that the plants, if they're really healthy, they don't attract the bugs. So the point is to get a really healthy plant, and then you don't need to spray stuff for bugs. So it's the conditions that we create will start, and we can start dictating our environments, which will make it a lot easier to live with the rest of the world and not have to do them harm.
That's a good point, and I see it too in terms of social interactions. For example, say with bullies, a lot of kids have, and adults too for that matter, have trouble with being bullied. And this is part of creating a different environment will change the act of bullying and change our impression of us being victims of being bullied as well. There's ways of dealing with bullies that end up with a much better end result than the usual conflict approach or the victim and bully approach and so on and so forth. For example, with humor, I was talking with Guy about this a few weeks ago. We talked about the use of humor in a bullying situation. And he gave this example of this gang. He was in, I think he was in Calcutta, and he was like in India, and he decided to go there with no money and just totally be like the local people and so on. At one point, he was surrounded by this gang who wanted to take everything he had and probably his life too. And he ended up, all he had was he had some pretty stones in his pocket that he'd been picking up off the beach all day. And so he had all these interesting looking stones. And so this gang surrounded him and they were ready to pounce. And suddenly he pulled out one of these stones and said, "Look what I found today. It's really cool. Look, how would you like to have one of these?" And gave one to like the head guy and so on. They got some of the other ones interested, and they all started passing around these pretty stones, and they actually became really good friends from that. And he interacted with them, and he had a really great result. He lost all his pretty stones, but he actually gained a bunch of maybe iffy friends, but at least a bunch of friends, and turned what could have been a really bad situation into a completely positive situation. So that's an example of how the change of the conditions in our environment and in our internal environment, our emotions especially, can change the external conditions as well. So I just wanted to give that as an example.
That's a great story there, Rick, because yes, it's a change of condition, and with dealing with people as well, we've got to look at our habits and other people's habits and sit back and just watch, because often all of these types of behaviors create some kind of energy exchange. A bully gets a certain kind of energy from you if you play the victim or if you fight back. So if you change the energy that they were expecting to feed off, it doesn't work anymore. Because there always seems to be some, it's like an energetic exchange. And we often, as well, we seem to, play the victim because we're going to get the attention, for example. So it's to look at ourselves and others around us and realize where the energy is coming from, where it's going to. And you just learn to change this condition, to then change that energy that shouldn't be, to something that is much more positive and a much more relaxed and caring environment.
I'll give you another example of that phenomenon, which just came up recently. I was reading yesterday about, there's a group now of bikers that accompany kids that have been abused to court and sort of protect them so that they can testify against their abusers. And this is a strange idea. How would bikers help abused kids? But they actually take them in and will give them full protection against their abuser, to enable them to go to court, to testify against them. They give them advice, and they'll actually set up a 24/7 protection with motorcycles in front of their house if necessary. And they bring them right into the courtroom with full protection and all this kind of thing. And I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I thought, wow, that's a strange twist, that And these bikers that do this, they check them out first, and they can have criminal records, but not to do with anything to do with the abuse of kids or other offenses like that. And I thought, well, geez, that's an interesting.
I think even criminals sometimes have a code of what they're not prepared to tolerate.
Absolutely. This guy that started it like 20 years ago because of whatever circumstances, and he thought that it was necessary and useful.
Anybody else like to jump in and give your 5 cents worth?
I think the image of the Tom Silas's video, that gives us an idea of how plasma can protect us in every sense and experience and what have you. We've been told ever since we first studied the plasma science that if we had a mag drive in our homes, this would protect us from people coming into our homes to be aggressive towards us.
Well, I keep on telling the story. We built our mag-grav and we plugged it in, and my children are 4 years apart, so they've never gotten on. They've always like bickered with one another and carried on. Since my daughter came out and started crawling and bothering her big brother, they haven't gotten on. And we had the mag-grav on for about 6 weeks, and I turned to Jim and I said, have you noticed anything different in the house? And suddenly, like chalk and cheese, it was just a total switch. They started talking to one another, and now they're friends, and we haven't looked back since. That was 2 years ago, and they have a totally different relationship. And all I can ascribe it to is that 6 weeks of the mag-grav, and it's been on ever since.
Well, there's a Chinese group that called it the happy box, because people felt happy when they came into the room where the mag-grav was operating.
Well, we were told to try and install these mag-gravs in police stations or public offices, weren't we?
And put some Gans water in their fountains and their water features. I'm sure it would make a big difference.
I don't think we're advocating to put Gans water into the police station's water supply or anything like that. But if they were to, advocate for it and wish for it, then certainly, yes. But there's actually big laws against putting foreign substances into water supplies, and there's many people are against that, because that's why people are against fluoride and other kinds of things like that.
No, I wouldn't do it in drinking fountains and things. I'm thinking more in terms of the architectural stuff,
Well, soon,
water features and things.
Right. Hopefully soon, the Gans water will actually be available after the certification process, first in Ghana, but then rapidly to countries all over the world. So it might be entirely possible to leave a few 6-packs of Gans water at the police station. They can offer it to their clientele to help calm them down a bit, perhaps. Maybe that's the way of the future, is maybe the police of the future, instead of arresting or tasering someone right off the bat, maybe they'll sit down and have a conversation over a Gans water and work it all out.
The last time I was in the police station, I had to go and get certification for a passport. And I had to go to my local police station to get fingerprints and all sorts of things. This is a South African passport. They want to verify everything about you. And so I had to go in, and they took me back to the back of the cells where they did the fingerprinting. And so there was a guy in one of the cells, and you could see they were explaining to me that this is what their life is like. They're basically picking up guys that are high on meth and high on all sorts of really awful ice and drugs, and they put them in the tank, and they basically look after them until they kind of come a bit down off their high, because they usually want to hurt themselves or do strange things, but they can get really violent in there. So you think, you never know what a small amount of plasma could do to just even things out a little bit. Because it's a very sad fact of society today that so many of police stations are filled with drug addicts that are doing silly things to themselves and others. And I firmly believe that all this addiction is due to such separation from others in society. We've created such separation between ourselves and others that we feel so isolated, and this is where all these addictions come from. And they've gotten worse and worse over the years. And yes, these substances are highly addictive, so you take them once and you can't get off them. But a lot of it is to do with this alienation in the world that people feel. So it's hopefully the plasma can help with many of those difficult situations.
Anybody else have any questions or comments they would like to ask? I don't see anything in the chats though yet either on the Facebook live stream or YouTube. Yes, Mark. I think you had your hand up earlier.
No, I was just trying to get my mic up on the screen for when I was ready to talk.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are you not ready to talk, Mark?
Oh, sure I am. I could share a small story. Let's see how this will work. I had a roommate, and I had to confront him. He was having some bad behavior, some other issues there. And I was across on one side of the room, and he was on the other, sitting at the table. And then all of a sudden he got up, and he started walking towards me with kind of had a frown on his face, and he was looking at me with a different look. And he had his hands clenched in fists down by his sides. And I knew this guy had some propensity to violence. He'd spent many years in jail and so on. And as he started walking towards me, small steps, I just saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I just started saying, and this is just when I met the Keshe Foundation and so on. And I started to say, I elevate your soul. I elevate your soul. I elevate your soul. And when he got about 2 feet from me, he just kind of shook his head like he had snapped out of something and went back and sat down. So I thought that was somewhat powerful. I didn't know exactly what was happening or if he was just trying to scare me. But I just kept saying that, and it stopped.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Just giving me an idea. We could have a couple of small vials with GANs in our pockets. Carry these continually around, and this could also give us the consciousness of what we have to do and help us out in creating this atmosphere.
The thing is, we all carry at least 50 kilograms of GANs on our bodies all the time.
Yeah, but we're not conscious of it.
That we can activate it anytime we wish. We don't have to have the GANs in bottles or anything else, because we have it all with us, and we have the GANs as reminders, but we actually have a lot more GANs in us than in those little containers. All we have to know is how to activate it. As was the examples with the bullies, for example, that's a way of activating the GANs of our brains, the GANs of our body, to cooperate together to come up with an outcome that's better than just using the the raw emotions of fear and so on. Instead, we are able to come up with a joke or come up with a just a happy outcome of some sort under a somewhat stressful situation, which could have multiple outcomes very easily.
And if all else doesn't succeed, you run like hell.
That's usually your GANs in another way, yeah. GANs of the muscles.
That was Jim always used to tell me. That was, he either talked his way out of any confrontation at school, or he just ran like hell, and he never ever got beaten up.
That's why they call it fight or flight.
Right. Why run when we can fly away?
Well, that's the thing about it, I guess, is we can choose to engage, or we can choose to just observe and essentially fly away in a way. It takes two to tango, and if someone wants to fight and you're not there to fight them, well, there's no fight. It's a one-way, non-existent fight. Trouble is, in our world right now, there's many countries that are gearing up for the fight, and they're putting on all their fighting equipment and getting all their fighting tools ready and whatnot. And
in every fight, we have to have an enemy, and the point is, we have to figure out that nobody's our enemy, because we all come from the same, and we're all family.
That's the whole thing that's going on right now. And if the countries that are gearing up for fighting and they have to find an enemy, and they're trying to find any reason that they can put together at all to claim so-and-so's an enemy, and eventually they're going to look kind of silly running around in all their, their gear, in all their fighting gear, and find out that there's actually no enemy there, and the whole world's watching these people all geared up for war, and they're going, well, actually there's nothing there, and you guys are looking silly. It's time to stop playing these games because they're not appropriate. But I don't know, we'll see. It's we are lucky to live in these times.
Rick,
you're lucky to live in interesting times.
Rick, you brought a fabulous example, but I gather nobody really knows the meaning. You said two to tango. You know that originally the tango was created or started in the streets here, where you had all these bullies, the male bullies at the corners. And instead of fighting each other, they started dancing. And that was the origin of the tango. Two bullies starting to dance at the street corners. And that's how the original tango started. And then after, over 100 years now, it's worldwide known.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, John. That's interesting. That's in South America, in Argentina, you mean?
Argentina, yes, in Buenos Aires. This started there in that zone where I was born.
I thought it was always like a male-female dance thing. Tango, but that's later in that then.
The original dance is two male bullies
Wow.
at the street corner. Instead of getting down to fighting, they started dancing.
Yeah.
And I also see when we start our box with the seawater, think of all the seawater we got in the world. but we've got to put the zinc plate and the copper plate with a nano covering, and that we start generating the GANs. And that's how we start changing the environment and changing the whole way nature has to work.
Well, we're just mimicking nature there, John. We're just turning your box into a leaf.
Yeah, but when you've got a box with salt water, you don't see anything happening, and nothing really, or we're not conscious of something's changing. But when we see this change in this box with those two simple plates, we start being conscious of what is really nature is.
Well, we create matter from a field, which is an astounding thing. You know, people look at this simple box and don't realize that you're creating matter from a field.
And it's not only us. I mean, I've got the experience with the mosquitoes. I've never killed a mosquito. I've fed them all along. I've always lived with mosquito marks, the small red spots on my skin. But for the last, maybe a year now, I just see the mosquitoes buzzing around. They've doubled in size. They land on my skin, but they don't bite anymore. They just absorb the energy and just buzz off.
You'll have to teach me that trick, John.
The trick is just living in the environment where the plasma is.
Are you drinking it every day?
Yes, very much so. I drink a couple of liters a day in my mate. That's the only thing I practically feed off, mate and a bit of cornflakes and yogurt, nothing else. The mates are green tea, local green tea, and well, everybody drinks this here. And
I've tried it, John. It's quite strong. I found it very much like a caffeine hit.
It is, yes. It's got taine, caffeine, and matane. But, well, because you may not get the good quality mate, because it's not as strong if it's properly treated, or it has to be a couple of years kept on in depots. So it's what they call stationing. And then it's not as strong, and once you get hooked on it, sort of thing. The other day somebody said, "You're not on drugs, you're not on coffee, you're not on this, you're not on that, but you drink your mate all day." Well, here in this zone, which is the only zone on Earth that we've got this plant here, it's a tree, originally a tree, but we don't let it grow too high, so it's easier to get hold of the leaves, because it's just like the original tea. It's you sort of crop the leaves and dry them up, station them, and put some hot water with them and drink it. And there are two different ways of drinking it also. We drink it out of a gourd with a bombija. It's a metal straw, which is one taste. And the other way is when pouring some of the leaves into the hot water like you do the tea, but the taste is pretty different also. So there are two different ways of producing this beverage.
May I ask you how you produce it?
From the plant itself, you mean?
Yes.
Well, it's a tree which you just crop or cut all the leaves and small branches, sort of cut them up, just like, I don't know if you know how the tea is made, but we've got the normal tea is also produced here. And this is chopped up in not so small pieces. It's put into ovens where all the humidity is sort of gotten out of the leaves and small branches. This is done in a slow way, so you don't lose all the original oils in the leaves. Then this is stored from 1 to 2 years in big depots to station and let it have a good taste, like any good wine. And then it's chopped up in smaller pieces and packed. And some people, when you have a lot of dust and very much small pieces, they're put in sort of the bags, like the tea bags, and they're produced this way, but it's not the original flavor, it's different. Our original flavor is the main bits of leaves, which are about a square millimeter in size. And you've got this in a gourd, in sort of a, let's say, a cup with this a metal straw we drink out of. You pour hot water, not boiling water. You mustn't boil the water. The water should be about 85 degrees. Pour it in, leave it a few seconds, and just absorb the water through this straw, and that's the way we drink it. You see everybody walking around with a gourd in the hand, offering you the gourd to drink it, and with a thermos under the arm. The Arabs are using it or drinking it in another way. Instead of passing the gourd around, because everybody thinks, oh, I'm not going to drink out of the same metal straw that you're drinking out of. So they all have their own gourd, and they pass the kettle with the hot water around the people that are around sitting around in a reunion or whatever. That's the way the Arabs are drinking it. We all offer you the gourd to drink out of it. The tourists sometimes look at you in a funny way when you offer them to drink the mate, but well, they sort of get accustomed to it and they continue this custom.
We do get so absorbed with all our things every day. I know, the coffee culture here, and the exact way to brew, and then the tea, and there's an exact way to brew. I think we all need to get a little bit more focused on the importance. I think we tend to do stuff like that because it's easier than focusing on the serious things. It's a release valve often. And we seem to get quite hooked on making our tea or our coffee a certain way and doing things. And yeah, I think it's an emotional attachment or release a lot of the time. So yeah, that's something we'll also have to overcome in time, is this fixation in a way on these. To me, it's a way to waste our time and not think of the real important issues. I don't have time for coffee anymore and this and that. I don't know.
Often those things like coffee and sugar and tea and so on have a common denominator, which is the hydrogen. And it's the hydrogen that gives us energy in our bodies, essentially, and becomes the plasma that the sugar that gets used in the cells and so on. Eventually it comes down to the hydrogens. If you look at sugar, C12H22O11, it's got a lot of hydrogens in it. It's the same with all the drugs like cocaine and so on. They're full of these hydrogens, and they can be energetic and even too much, so it makes people overly nervous, and they can wear out their organs because it's too stimulating. But perhaps we're moving toward a place where we absorb the hydrogens directly rather than through the intermediary of fruits and vegetables is one thing, and meat as well. But generally through food or through drugs, or directly through a big hit of sugar, for example, which is not a good way to do it. There's countries that are throwing out certain candy bars now because they've been discovered to create cancer, for example, and so on. That's the trouble with too many hydrogens.
It's also been quite a concerted effort over the last 50 years, I think, just to add more and more sugar into so many things, and get the stuff, to me, coming from Africa and coming to Australia, and the bread even has sugar in it, which in Africa is a complete and utter no-no. It was so odd to eat a normal piece of bread and it tasted sweet to me, whereas Australians think that that's the usual way to make bread. And I think it's just been shoved into so many things to try and hook people. Bit of salt, bit of sugar, and suddenly you're hooked because your taste buds just need it.
Also, they put sugar in bread in order to feed the yeast, so they make the bread rise and create the bubbles and so on. So if sugar feeds yeast, it makes sense that if we have yeast overgrowth in our bodies, then the sugar would tend to feed that as well. So that's one of the downsides of the industrialized diet. So there's overgrowths of yeast and other bugs and parasites and all that kind of thing. How can we look at all that from a plasmatic perspective to bring things back here? And how do you want to frame today's workshop too, I'm wondering?
Yeah, I think everybody gets it. The message was so deep that nobody wants to actually get into it.
We'll talk about anything else but that.
Yeah. It was just a bit of a brain fry there.
Well, it's true if you look at it, that often comes up that way. I know if I bring up certain topics with friends and so on, we'll instantly start to talk about everything else but that if possible. So
should I replay it?
Yeah, Diane suggested to listen to it again.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to do that, and then maybe somebody will have a few more comments.
Yeah, because we're afraid to take responsibility. That's why.
Okay, I'll replay it here for everyone.
The process of understanding is very simple. The process is, as I explained last time, I explained more in detail. We are created out of the rays within the center of the universe. In interaction and reduction in strength and division by the strength in certain strength fields, in collection of the totality of the expansion of the universe, some energies, some dynamic fields have come together. Over billions of years, these fields lead to the creation of what we call the sun. Where the plasma gathers together. The same process repeats again because the sun is the same as the energy center of the universe. Now, the heavier, the larger amount of the energy which is collected in this span of the universe, we call the sun, that irradiates out, does the same thing again. Radiates its fields out, and in interaction with itself, with the fields of itself, leads to creation of planet. In that process of the creation of planet, the same process happens again. In the interaction of the fields of the earth with its environment and cooling and exchange with the strength of the other things in the environment of the space of the solar system, leads to creation of man, cell, matter state. And that itself, in coming together and slowing down in certain ways, as we call, leads to another sun. We call the soul of the man. This is the truth about the life and creation of the man. But if the soul of the man can understand and absorb and be correct with his conduct, he can become the strength of the fields and carry the strength of the field of the planet which came to his creation. And if the soul can understand with the same process, can interact, can be correct, can absorb with itself the totality of the strength of what it needs, he shall become the sun. And then the same soul has the energy that it can absorb within the solar system, within the galaxy, shall become the center of the universe. Earth, we call it the rain, come from and goes back to. Solar system, we call it planetary system. We come from the rays, we become the planet, and we go back to the mother. The same thing happens with the galaxies, with the solar systems, which they get absorbed back in and they chewed up back in the universe. The life, the process of existence in the universe is the same. It doesn't matter on what exchange and what extent. So, what is the man fighting for? Why do we fight for something which has come from the point of the creation, and in the process it goes back to the creation? The soul of the man, as the energy of the earth gives the face of the man, the face of the earth, and that process is the same for the soul of the man. Our soul, in reduction in strength, in interaction with the emotion of the field of the environment, leads to manifestation of the existence of the man. But once it's completed, does it need the face? Or can it be and becomes free from it, what we call the soul of the man, to be free and detached from its existence? Our soul is part of the process of the creation. The key to one question, who man shall be in the future, to be answered. As we saw the sun became the earth, and as we saw the earth became man's soul, what would be the destiny of the soul of the man now becomes free at the point of departure from physicality. Would it become the sun for creation of another life, or many lives, or correction of lives? This shall be, and this is how it happens. When you create a soul which is not correct, which is misconduct by itself cannot give, you lead to the creation of this next cycle of creation, which has started the wrong way, the wrong strength. This is one thing the man has never understood. You become the creator of another universe, another cycle. And this is what you have to judge within the structure of the soul of the man. What would I like that cycle to be? In the physical life, we create children. In the dimension of the life of the soul of the man, what that soul will create. If man has thought up to now, that's it, my end, my point, when I die is finished, there's as much fallacy that when the sun is destroyed in any shape or form, there shall be nothing left. But we know the part of the sun becomes part of the galaxy and becomes part of new life. So shall be the soul of the man. The judgment of the man has to be according to what he sees the future his soul can conduct to be. The day of judgment is for the man, not in front of the Creator. That what my soul judges to be and what shall create. Man never understood and shall never understand till can solve this dilemma within itself. The reality is very, very, very real. And that is, as we've seen, the energy of the galaxy become the sun, the energy of the sun has become the earth, and the energy of the earth has become the soul of the man. So shall be the soul of the man, which is the energy itself, another cycle of life. How can you change when you don't understand? How can you change the process of understanding if you do not understand the process of the creation? Do we need to extend the understanding of the man that what is the future he brings? We care about our children, what education they get, what they wear, how happy they'll be, where they sleep. Now the man has to be careful and consider what life shall my soul create? Because those are the children of your soul. As we see, the rays of the sun has become a planet and 7 billion children of it. 7 billion unlimited, which is growing. So the soul of the man will go through the same process. How many billions and subdivisions and sub-matter state of the physicality of the man your soul shall create? Would it be the soul of wars and conflict and forever killing? Or would it be the soul of this, let's say, solar system which is peaceful? This is the truth and the reality about the soul of the man. First of all, as I said many times recently, we never understood that the soul of the man is within the structure of the man. And now that we understood, we understand on departure from the physicality of the man, the same process will carry on as it did for a star, a planet. And the soul of the man becomes another energy source, a higher order, which itself leads to the creation. It becomes the star, it becomes the center of the new cycle of creation. This is what the human race has to understand. The cycle actually starts from the point of death and not finishes at the point of death. In so many ways, if one understands, is as the dusts, specks of dust came together to make the earth in the solar system, so has the specks of the atoms has come to be the creator of the man. And the essence of the creation of the specks of dust on the solar system has led to the creation of the man. So shall be the fields from the soul of the man which lead to creation of another cycle of life. What kind of life man would like to have to be created by his soul? This is the day of judgment. This is what man never understood. Now you have to understand. You have no choice. Up to today you were not aware of it. From today you are aware of it. You are responsible for it. Your conduct has to be to elevate your soul. That in elevating the soul, what you become the creator of stands correct in the conduct of the citizens. We don't give fairy tale. This is the truth. But as you've seen, the process does not stop with one sun. The cycle carries on. It's very interesting in how humanity now knows in fact to handle the fact. It'll take decades for man to understand, and then you understand those who become the tools of war, the tools of conflict. They have nothing to start with. They have to become the dust in the solar systems of the others till the day they learn more, as they cannot create a new cycle through their own soul. This is the elevation of the soul of the man. To be part of the creation of a beautiful life for the next cycle. When you don't have it, you have to become another cell in the body of the structure of the bigger, for you to be just there that you can done when you could have been the soul of the man. They say, do not create fear. I give you the point of love for creation. If you cared about your children on this planet to have the best, your true children will come out of your own soul in the coming time. How would you like to educate them? How would you like to be when you are in conflict with yourself and the cause of so much mayhem? This is the truth. And the man will take a long time to understand, as now that we understand the soul of the man is an operator for the creation of the future extent of the life of the man. Whatever is gathered by the soul at the end becomes his point of reference of his own creation of his own dimension. But the strangest thing is, what he creates from the soul shall become the creator of the other souls. This is the beauty about the creation, and one understands it, understands no limitation.
Lisa, hi everybody, it's Stefania.
Hi, Stefania.
Hi, Stefania.
I was maybe I was thinking about this suggestion. I don't know if it's fine for you. What about if we take the video and we did like Keshe did on the last teaching, bit by bit, analyze what Keshe said.
We can try.
Yeah, you know,
it might take us a while, but yes, it's quite deep.
Because we got, you know, I mean, for us, it's already part of the this way of thinking, you know, because we're part of the KSSI for a long time. Maybe all together with different heads, we can try to discuss each bits of what Keshe tried to say in the video. You know, I thought because maybe this could be yeah, because we all have different understanding, but we been doing the same things as well for a long time. So maybe together we can, yeah, just try to analyze. Yeah, this was just an idea. Mm-hmm.
Yes, he did say the same thing a few times over in different ways. So, you know, it's just reinforcing the same idea. But yes, I think maybe we can. Anybody else like to suggest anything? Or have anything else?
I would like to say one thing, that anything come out of you, whatever it is, it make a cycle. So what cycle you want it to be?
Anybody else?
Yes, Lisa, good morning. This is Gatwa. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Gatwa.
Good,
and
thank you. Thank you very much for a perfect, excellent summary. Now, and hello everyone else. What I have noticed is that it's very important that the sun or the soul is the creator of everything. I mean, fields gather and create the sun, which becomes the center of the universe. I think that's a very, very important point, because every creation is a universe by itself. Whether it's man, when we are created, we are the universe. We have the soul, which is our sun. Now, interestingly, it's when people die, what happens to the soul? If you are not elevated the way I understood it, if your soul is not elevated, you become the dust. In other words, your sun may not really create another beautiful universe. We might want to go through those and fully understand what happens when people have been killing others. When they die, what do they create? And those whose souls are elevated, what do they create? And the centrality of the sun in the whole process. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say.
Flint, maybe you want to go to the beginning and we can maybe just take it slide by slide. I don't know. There we go. We don't have to play it. There we go. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so yeah, there
I'll just mute it here.
Okay.
I'll just mute it and play it on. Here we go.
Okay, so there we go. We created out of the rays within the center of the universe. I think we all pretty clear on that one. And that's not even that we came from the center of the universe originally, because the unicos is what started the universes in the beginning. So we understand that this is even a smaller part of something bigger, the creator, the original. Let's go. The next one, I think it's what I had to do with this is I actually had to slow it down and put pauses in between each of Mr. Keshe's sentences because it's so packed and it would have been too quick. So there we go. So this is a bit more of a detail in interaction and reduction in the strength and division by the strength in certain strength fields in collection of the totality of the expansion of the universe. So obviously we're looking here at the expansion, which means there's interaction and reduction because things are going out. So as they're going out, they're kind of reducing. Has anybody else got any ideas on that one? Because I see the out as a kind of a reduction, or it's gaining distance from the center.
Yes, Brett.
Oh.
Yes, Brett, you can go ahead and speak there.
Not just yet, in a few more sentences, or a few more screens, thanks.
Okay, let's carry on. Here we go. Some energies, some dynamic fields have come together over billions of years. So now, once they've gone out, now they somehow coalescing.
Sorry, Lisa, do you mind to go again into the sentence before, please?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
So, from my understanding, maybe this is just my understanding. So, what I understood that Keshe said that when the strength, the field's strength diminish, it's when the things become tangible at certain field strength. So it's where maybe the earth is created, or when the human body is created. So is it correct? So it's so. Do you think this is what it means? This sentence, the interaction of the reduction of the strength and then division, when it said in certain strength fields, the collection of the totality. Yeah, so this is what I thought it means, this sentence. I'm correct or not?
I think so, Stefania. And I think, as it goes further away from the center, I'm sure I've heard Mr. Keshe also say it's not, it's not going 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It's literally going by orders of magnitude as it's going out. So the strength is reducing exponentially, that's the word I'm thinking of. So it's getting weaker and weaker, and the physical fields are the weaker, except in the submatter, which I'm not quite sure what the submatter is yet. I've read it in the book, but I'm not quite understanding exactly what the submatter is, whether it's just like the little tiny bits of energy that would make up a atom, for example, that come together to form an atom. So your physical stuff is your weakest of the lot, and it's more on the outside edges, because as you're going closer to the center, things become less tangible and or more of the plasma strength.
Doesn't he talk about the creation of the sun next? I think that's the first reduction would be the sun, and then from the sun, the earth is created and the humans and so on.
Yeah, I think so, although I think the galaxy is missing in between, because there would be a center of the galaxy too, and I think it is mentioned there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it might explain itself in the frame after.
The next few slides, yeah. You want to go forward, Flint? Okay, so after a certain amount of time, these dynamic fields come together over billions of years. And let's look at the next sentence, because I think
on this one,
yeah.
On this one, do you think because the sun created the earth created the human body, do you think our RNA, it's like when you say some energy, some dynamic, the one before, where it said billions of years, the sentence that was before on the screen, I can't remember which one. No, the one.
This one.
Yeah, this one. Have come together over billion of years, no? So this one, if you think about the human body when it's creating, this one is referred to the RNA. You know when they say that we all have all information in our RNA.
Did the RNA come before the creation of the sun?
It's like maybe it's because they're the same fields. No, at the end of the day, we're all one. So I was thinking.
Well, first the sun came though. Were the RNA, was the RNA and DNA there before the sun?
Yeah, no, not before. But what I'm saying is because the RNA has all information of since we started. Maybe the RNA.
Has the information even of the creator. Yes, I'm sure it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You just got to tap into it because it's far inside there.
Well, it's an interesting question. I wonder if the RNA existed before the sun, or is it part of the Earth's structure?
I don't think that's what Stefania is saying, Rick. I think what she's saying is because originally the energy came from the center of where it came from, our RNA literally has the memory of that all the way back to the center. I think that's what she's trying to express.
I think the RNA got that, but I don't know if it has the actual memory of that like that.
But wouldn't the RNA be created from the fields of the center of the universe, same as the center of the sun? In that case, wouldn't it carry the information with those fields?
That is what I meant. Yeah.
Yes, but our humanness, our soul, and our human and that whole lineage of humanness has to do with the earth, though.
Right, but again, everything goes back to the creation or the creator. So just like in the video here, the earth is created from the sun is created from the galaxy is created from the universe.
But what is the RNA created from?
The RNA is created from the fields, the interaction of the fields that are from the universe, from the galaxy, from the sun, from the earth, and that in turn creates all the matter that we see around us, which is also us and our RNA.
But would the RNA be there before the creation of the Earth, is what I'm saying.
But okay, no. The RNA would be different in other planets because it would have a different field strength.
But not talking about planets, I'm talking about other stars, because the stars happened first, then the planets were created from the stars, right?
Right,
That's
but
why
it's
we're all unique.
it's all about a reduction of the strength of the fields.
Right. So was there a what do you call
The
it?
totality of the information is in the fields from when it
High
began.
energy RNA that originated from the central principal energy,
Which
or
then would be cycled down and filtered into the galaxy.
sun RNA,
And which then would be cycled down and filtered into the sun, and then would be cycled down and filtered into the earth. But all the information is still there.
That's why we got the physical soul and non-physical soul. You know, so like Keshe said, we got two souls.
right? That might be part of it too. So I wonder if the physical soul, the soul of the man, or sorry, the soul of physicality, maybe that is entangled with RNA that's not maybe necessarily from this planet, but from some planet rather than from a star directly. So it'd be from that level where it's manifest.
Actually,
Right, because it has to be filtered, right? The strength has to be reduced.
You would think so, in order just to manifest, in order to have a physical.
Exactly, but what does Mr. Keshe say? If you go from our environment and you go into other environments that have a higher strength, we will no longer exist because of our strength. Our strength cannot survive being, let's say, bombarded by field strength that are much, much, much higher.
But that's when we can fold down into the RNA and then pop up in some other planet again with that.
Because we are all interlinked with the strongest fields. If we can use those fields as a communication mechanism, why couldn't we use those fields to transfer the information of ourselves to other places? Because it's not our soul, it's our physicality that cannot take the strength.
Right. And the RNA is more information. It's an information chip more than the physicality in a way. I think they don't even know whether it's considered to be alive. It's like a virus is not considered to be alive or dead. It's just a set of information that requires a host for it to engage into, it's like a key that it's basically inert until it finds a lock that it can open.
With your strength of your physicality. So that is your soul.
Like where you were born on the planet, your parents, it's a little uniqueness of you and all the memory. What were you going to say, Stefania?
I was said about maybe the DNA. But maybe here I'm just guessing. DNA maybe is the physicality of the RNA. But I just maybe.
Right, the RNA is a higher strength and can be filtered down to a lower strength, which would be the DNA, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Guys, can I just voice something here? It's something that I've discovered. And Rick, you know about it, but what you haven't done is that none of you have actually looked at what this guy who is a deceased scientist that was killed by the deep state for creating these little biomachines that are made from universal energy that actually put things together. So what they do is they eat proteins and create DNA. So how did life start? As Mr. Keshe says, was it a chicken or the egg? It has to be the egg first. How did the egg get there? So these little biomachines are actually, they're created out of amino acids and sunshine. So what they do is when they form, they start to build DNA structures, and then they eat microbes and then regurgitate them into a DNA structure that they want them to be. And they're intelligent. They're an intelligent life form. So the way that the whole thing all started was that these little biomachines, which are part of creation, actually work as long as you give them the right environment. They can become a life form from a crystal, and then they start to reproduce themselves, and then they start to reproduce all of these different types of little machines that do all these different types of things. And what he found is that he could actually create all these different life forms.
Brett, are you talking about Mr. Keshe here?
No. This is a scientist called George Merkel. He was killed back in 2000, but his work is absolutely mind-blowing.
Right, but I'm just curious of why we went on to a different person when we're talking about
it's not the same. It's the same subject. What I'm saying to you guys is that the creation itself works in this way, is that when the planets are born and the sun is shining, life is created through certain elements that come together, and these little biomachines start creating DNA structures which end up forming into life forms, and plants first, and then other higher life forms, and then other higher life forms, and then other higher life forms, and then eventually they create the DNA structure of the man. So they never create, and each of these machines do a different task, and none of them, but they're so intelligent that they never make one single thing. They always make diversity. And that's how we get the diversity on this planet, is through these little tiny machines. And because they're...
Brent, I would have to say that the diversity on this planet is created through the diversity of the fields that are created from this environment, and not from machines.
But they're not really machines. They're bio creatures, and they come in. They can actually sequence DNA. So when you think about how the egg, if the egg came before the chicken, how did the egg get made?
The egg got there by fields.
Yes, fields.
It is the fields, because if you look at a place like there's a place in Australia here, they had a farm that was totally just decimated, and over 10 years, this guy sort of rehabilitated his farm, and within those 10 years, suddenly 100 years ago grasses started to grow. Now, don't tell me grass seeds had sat in the soil dormant for 100 years. No, they'd recreated the conditions and the energies that were there for those grasses to appear, and they appeared.
Yes, but they're created by these little tiny...
Not little tiny, it's energy coming together, Brett.
Okay, I put it this way.
Brett, were you created by these little biomachines?
Hey?
Brett, were you created by the biomachines? Is that what you're saying? We are all created by these biomachines?
Eventually, because our
eventually
DNA
over what you're talking about, over billions of years then?
Yes, of course. They change everything over all of these billions of years. And there's always that moving forward where they resequence the genome and they evolve everything. So all I can say to you is, if I have posted lots of George Merkel's work, and I just posted something in the private chat, you watch those 3 videos that are there, and then come back to me and say that I'm talking rubbish, because the guy actually created them. So there is
it's more a matter of whether it's on topic or not. I'm not clear whether
it is, because because this is how creation works.
Well, can we just move on to a new slide, please? Because I think we are kind of getting slightly off.
Well, what about the fish?
On the sun.
There you go.
We are only on the sun. Let's stick to where we're going here. Okay. So the fields lead to what we call the creation of the sun. So that is the step down.
Yeah,
in the division.
One dimension at a time here. We can't do the whole entire cosmos all in one. So we're down to the sun now. This is the reduction that Mr. Keshe is talking about. It's now reduced down to the creation of the sun.
Okay, let's go, Flint. Okay, so now we're gathering again, where the plasma gathers together. The same process repeats again, because the sun is the same as the energy center of the universe. So each time it has to come in and gather itself again to be able to put itself out in a slightly weaker form. Is that correct? Have I understood it correctly?
Yeah, the strength has to be different. It has to be, I don't know. I like to think of it like a electronic circuit where you have an LED that has takes up so much power, but you still have light. You need that step down in order to create another dimension, let's call it, because the sun is a different dimension than the galaxy.
So is he talking about the process of creating suns, basically, all the suns of the universe through this plasma gathering process? Is that right?
Eddy currents. The eddy currents of the galaxy create the sun. The eddy currents of the sun create the planets.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Right, but does that take billions of years? I know when Mr. Keshe says all of a sudden fish show up in an area, that must have happened spontaneously. Or
well, it still happens from the onset, as in the fields will create the life, but the life isn't just popped into existence as a fish. It has to follow the dynamism of the environment that it's in. So it still has a life cycle, just like the Earth does, and the sun and the galaxy. Everything has a life cycle.
Because this is billions of years, because the sun has a life cycle of billions of years.
Yes, and because everything took all of those billions of years to reach to that point, for that puddle to form, for those fish to form in that puddle, and all of those conditions of the environment took a long time.
Not about time. Time is not
instant thing. That instant miracle took a long time to come.
Well, but it's not time, Rick, because what time do fields have? There is no time for fields, right? So it's only time for our physicality.
I think also when they say billions of years, it refers to the strength, like you know, like you know, when we do the spiral and the center, it's the strongest point, and it's gather all the information. So maybe when also refer billions here, it means also referring to the strength, like for example, like when Keshe said, you know, we have the sun. You know, in the body, every cell has got little suns, or like when we do the guns, we do little suns, or when so we always have this spiral where we have the all in each of us, or even the fish has got this sun inside. So so I think maybe when you say the sun is the same as the energy of the center of the universe. So the center of the energy of the center of the universe. So and that it's in each living being. So the two are together, like everything's got the weak part, and everything's got this the center, the energy center of the universe.
Right, that's right, because it's the same energy. He doesn't say anything about the same strength here, but he says the same energy, so the same fields.
Same fields, yeah. You are
it
right.
has had division.
That that energy center of the universe is that one that it's gone millions of years. I mean, this is my understanding.
I think we can't quite comprehend the spans of time, because we sit on this planet and it's just a bit incomprehensible
But
to
you
us.
can, Lisa, and I like Rick's analogy here. This is perfect because if you think about the sun and you're there, what time has it taken for you to think about the sun and be there in your soul level? There is no time involved, right? So we can think about the center of the universe and be there with our soul, but there is no time involved like we think of in regular astronomy, where it's taken 15 billion years for the sun to reach the other end of the universe. Time, again, is a matter construct. It's not a field construct.
For example, of that, the scientists recently discovered, supposedly, the astrophysicists, that every galaxy has a rotation time, and it's all the same for each galaxy. Just about exactly 1 billion years is the rotation time for a galaxy, no matter if they're small or big. And this is like blown them away. How can this be? And it's interesting. It's also interesting in terms of the lifespan of a proton. I think Mr. Keshe said one time, and also.
Well, I don't think it's weird, because if you look at the smallest thing that we can look at, I guess, is an atom, and think about the electrons running around a oxygen atom and the electrons going around a helium atom, are they going at the same speed? Science. Mainstream science tells us that everything is going at the same speed around those atoms, but they're completely different atoms and they're separated by distance. So why would that not be the same for what's above us? So the galaxies, the universe, the solar systems, they would all have that same type of construct. So in that level, would they not move the same?
Thanks, Phil. I think you're blowing everybody's minds, yeah.
Yes, we have a question from Doug, or you had some statements there you wanted to say, or Frank Zippo.
Frank has an interesting comment there in the chat, so maybe you can talk about that.
Sorry, Flynn. Yeah, it's Doug here. From what I understand, I wrote it wrongly in the chat, but everything is qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. That's an ancient.
Yeah, that's very powerful, because it's all in the quantity of the plasma or the fields, isn't it?
Yes. This was coming from ancient times in Sanskrit and Vedic information from India. We call it India, but that's the way they explained it. It's qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. No matter which, whatever you're talking about, universes or atoms, it's the reduction.
But the quality is the same. The quality, the energy, the fields, the energy
essence,
is the center of the universe. Yeah.
Yep. It's all the same. It's just we look at it in terms of measurements and so on, but in the underlying truth, it's all the same. It's just quantitatively different.
Frank, do you want to come in there at all? you want to read that out, Flint?
Yes. He says, does strong stay stronger forever in giving? Same for weak receiving? This should lead to a stable equilibrium, of course, only in an isolated system, but there are other fields everywhere which then interact.
Well, things do seem to finish their cycle, but then a new cycle starts. It gives off until it doesn't retain that specific whatever it is anymore, and it becomes something else.
I think it depends on what you mean by forever. Like, for example, the sun's been around, what, a couple billion years or whatever it is. And if we say, is it going to stay strong forever? Well, say it stays strong for another 2 billion years. Is that forever to you? And forever enough? Would you like to live a little longer to see it longer? I mean, does it matter whether it's 100,000 or a billion or 10 billion or 100 billion years? Would that be forever enough? Or do you mean like forever, like eternity? Does the strong stay strong for eternity? That doesn't
seem... The fields are there forever, but what it is comprised of in the physicality it comes up as doesn't.
It's always dynamic is the thing.
Yeah.
No
well, this universe has a life cycle as well. Mr.
Right.
Keshe talked about that.
Yes.
This universe will eventually split off into 2 different universes.
Right.
But still in totality have the same strength as the original. Just like how a cell separates, right? In totality, they have the same strength as the original, and then they diversify from there. So forever is forever is forever. I mean, we came from something. We came from another universe, which split. That universe came from something else. That universe came from something else before that. So I like to think of it as our universe, or the unicos, has to be just like our universe, or so it's rotating. It's rotating around another center. And that center could be, I mean, we don't know the amount of levels. It could go on for infinity, but that means that the fields has been there for eternity and will always be there for eternity. But
okay,
that does not mean the physicality is there for eternity.
But does the strong stay strong forever? That was his actual question. So how do you think about that in terms of, like, does that strong eventually break up into, it splits, it breaks up into smaller bits that are strong in their own
energy. That's right. It radiates its energy, it radiates the fields. But when those fields change to a different environment, does that mean that they go away, or does that mean that they are changed? But does that also mean that the strength that they originally came from isn't there anymore? I would say no. I would say it always is there. It's always at the same field.
Let's look at a sun, for example. Like there's a life cycle to stars, like in general, right? So our sun goes through a life cycle, and the way I understand it is the stars accumulate the plasma basically, and they get bigger and bigger, they get stronger and expand, but at a certain point they basically go into supernova and blow up and kind of disperse their contents all over the place.
But what we, for our knowledge in terms of mainstream, we think that it's the center of the sun burning like a fusion reactor and creating elements, and then it runs out of elements. I think that it's completely different, and I think it has to do with the position and the field strength that the sun is receiving at that point in time. Could be as we've said before, if ourselves go into a different environment that is too strong for us, we are no longer able to keep the same form, then that would be the same for a sun. So if if a sun is circling around a galaxy and it changes into a different environment due to its, let's say, it's meandering its way into the center of that galaxy, it crosses, it goes over a certain threshold according to its own dynamic field strength. Then all of a sudden, what do you have there? You have too much energy being put in, and what's it going to do? You know, I would say a supernova is a good outcome of that. But that still doesn't mean that its field strength is gone. It just changes form.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide, Flint. Let's have a look.
Yes, thank you, Benj.
Okay, so now the heavier, the larger amount of energy, which is collected in the span of the universe called the sun, that it radiates out, does the same thing again. So whatever comes in, therefore, starts going back out. Anyone want to dissect that a little bit?
I think it's exactly what we've been talking about for the last slides.
Yeah,
I think
so.
we covered that one.
You know, because
that's what instant communications does.
Yeah.
Like the banana effect, when Keshe said the banana, I think, you know, like a toroid, isn't it, or not?
How about looking at this from the perspective of guns? When Mr. Keshe says that each of the atoms of the guns, each one of those small materials that we call guns is the equivalent of a small sun. So that is the soul. Where is the what do you call it? What is larger than the sun? The sun is the center of the universe. So if the guns, each one of them is a sun, equivalent of a small sun, of which universe?
It's like a comet.
Isn't it just like we've been talking about here, Gatwa, with the sun? The sun is radiating out fields. Same with the Earth, same with us, same with every other atom. The GANs would be no different, right? The GANs would contain the fields in a different state.
That's why the patches work so well, and that it radiates out, but it also comes back in at the same time. It collects in,
balance,
gives out, so that it collects what you don't need and gives what you do need.
That's what I always felt. That's why the CO2, because with the CO2, whenever I tested it with the pH meter, it was the one that was closest to 7. It seemed to me it's slightly gravitational, but it is mainly balanced. Whereas your CH3 is a giver, and all your other ones are very much more gravitational, like your copper and your zinc.
This is very interesting. The sun is the creator of everything.
And the carbon, when we burn it, is the source of all of the fire on our planet. Everything that we burn has carbon that gives us the light and heat from it.
But not only that, but we also have the carbon dioxide created from those fires in the atmosphere, which are breathed back into with the plants, created more life itself. It's just the environment, right? The balance of the environment.
Definitely.
So how about this? If the Earth didn't need CO2, would there be fires? Would the environment not change to meet what the Earth needs in terms of fields? We're getting hotter. For an example, you're going through climate change. Is that climate change due to the sun? Is it due to something the earth needs? Is it due to what we have put upon it? I don't think our effect has anything to do with what the earth needs, because that's what we need.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
Mr.
that did happening?
Otherwise, why would
That's
all the other planets be warming up at the same
right.
time?
But it might be
It's just
something.
another cycle.
Surely
It's a
we
cycle.
have contaminated them too.
It's a result of the Earth moving in closer fields to the sun in its orbit
But
around
is
the
it
Earth.
true that we have a global warming? Is that a fact?
No, that's a myth.
No, you can't say that. It's not.
Well,
global warming. Yes, of course. There are some parts of the Earth that are warming. There are some parts of the Earth that are cooling.
But the fake stuff is
it's a climate cycle.
It's the fake stuff is that it's saying it's caused by man and CO2 in the air and stuff.
Well, there is no question that we change our environment that we're in by letting out the greenhouse gases, by putting out pollution in the atmosphere. We do damage to ourselves. So, for example, Rick is in a very nice place right now, but when he goes to a place that everybody else could consider a city, Rick is sick because of the pollution that's in the atmosphere. We can't say that we have not changed the environment of this earth. That would be a falsity. We change it for ourselves, but we also hurt ourselves with that change.
I think the biggest fault is that we talk about global warming and talk about, the oceans getting
well,
rising.
We just say if we're to blame,
in the same day that we talked about it, 30,000 people died from the results of burning fuels on this planet, and we don't even think and talk about the 5, 6, 8 million, whatever estimate.
That's right.
People every year that die from the burning of fuels, more than in the Holocaust, more than in World War II, more than in all the world wars put together and all the wars of the world put together just in the last 2 decades.
But again, this is because of greed, right?
This is totally ignored by all the media, all the people that talk about global warming. So I don't.
Well, there's only two options right now. Okay, so which is there's climate change and we're to blame, or there's climate change and we're not to blame. If you are in it's climate change and we're not to blame, that tells everybody that we can do whatever we want and we can put out as much pollution on this planet as possible. And that is not true, simply not true. If you're in the climate change and we cause the climate change, then we should stop, plain and simple. But we don't, because it's greed. There's no right option there.
We're always given a false
option is not to talk about either one and to talk about just stop
the damage that we do to ourselves.
So you say the 30,000 people that died today and the millions that got sick today from the same burning of fuels that you're not even talking about when you talk about the change in the climate. Geez, it's like talking about the weather when you got people shooting bullets at you. That's ridiculous.
You see, we're always given a false coin to look at two sides of, and it's actually not the correct coin to be looking at.
That's exactly right. That's the big diversion. That is the diversion in itself. Let's talk about climate change. What side are you on? The Democrats or the Republicans? Well, they're both equally corrupt. Why would I want to take one of those sides? It's a false question. Even it's a part of the diverting, or what do you call it? The division, dividing the public and making us all think there's an issue there when gets diverted.
That's right, because then they say that, oh, if you think the other way, then I gotta hate you. But that is
right. Wrong. You're not. You're one of those people. Yeah. Anyway. I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, I think we're off topic again.
Let's get back onto topic again.
I'm excited to get to the next slide.
Mr. Keshe was clear on climate change and that man has caused it is totally a fallacy and it's made to make money.
Right.
And he points out several aspects of how much CO2 that we actually put in the atmosphere versus stuff being naturally by volcanoes and such that
Right.
not even doesn't even compare.
Rick,
But that doesn't mean we don't need to clean up our act.
How
can
much
I ask Rick a question?
that has gone there naturally? None, right? But we put it there. So again, we're talking about we have caused damage. It's not that we haven't caused damage.
Can I ask Rick a question?
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Was it the CO2 you're talking about burning and releasing and all that? That causing the health issues from burning fossil fuel?
Scam, Mark. This is the scam, the way I see it. I've been studying this for 20 years or more. I used to plant trees with the woman who started the whole carbon credits thing.
Oh, yeah.
Did her university degree in carbon credits and started it in British Columbia and Canada and the world and all this. And I understand the issues, but the thing you got to realize, I'm kind of an old guy, and when CO2, when carbon dioxide came out, as it was used as an indicator gas, indicating the other 200 toxic gases or more that are included in the combustion process. And they wanted to get the statistics of all industrial combustion processes and vehicles, put them all together, but they had so many complicated names and all these oxides and dioxides and all this stuff that they had to say, well, let's use just one indicator gas, the CO2, as an indicator gas of all this toxic stuff. And every time we talk about a ton of CO2, we actually mean so many tons of this and that, or grams of this and that, whatever, depending on the concentrations of all these toxic gases and particulates. And it was all included in CO2. And then all of a sudden, it was that whole thing was diverted. It was diverted, and CO2 became, the CO2 in the atmosphere causes warming due to the reflection, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. It's actually the other compounds that are even worse, but they picked on CO2 and that we have to reduce the CO2. And that became the thing about global warming and CO2. And that was the diversion to keep people not thinking about the health issues of the 30,000 people dying every day and the hundreds of thousands, tens of millions to hundreds of millions that are sickened every single day from the results of burning fuels.
Right, we're not in India.
We just burning kerosene and third world countries where they burn it for light and heat inside of places, and it shortens their lifespan by 30, 40 years. You know, this is the kind of thing that we're up against in the world with the burning.
I think a good point here, Rick, is to ask how much CO2 caused the China to be fogged in like it is most of the time. Is that CO2 that's causing that? Nope.
It's actually you end up with the burning of fuels. You end up with ozone, which is a big ground level. Ozone is a big thing. CO2 doesn't kill people. Well, it does. You can have, if you're in an enclosed space that has no air and something's absorbed all the oxygen, just leaving CO2 because it's like an inert gas. It doesn't react with much. And if it builds up in the atmosphere, yes, you can actually die from CO2 poisoning. It's very, very rare. It doesn't happen. Carbon monoxide, yes, but not carbon dioxide. And so it's a non-issue as far as it's not toxic. It's actually plants love it, especially when they have the other factors are already to the maximum. Then they can have up to 40% more growth with increase in CO2. So it actually helps offset all the cutting of trees and everything else that we get rid of the plants on this planet. They actually thrive in the CO2. They don't much like the other toxic stuff, but they slough it off pretty good or absorb it for us, thankfully.
But I thought the CO2 was like 0.2% of the whole atmosphere. So thinking you can modify that, increase it, decrease it, and going to make a big change.
Well, actually, a small difference makes a huge difference in the atmosphere. But the thing about it is, it's mostly the effect, the dome effect over the cities where the vehicles and so on give off so much CO2. It ends up like a dome over the city. The sunlight comes in and it reflects back off the Earth's surface And when it reflects back, it can't get back out into the atmosphere again. It reflects back down.
Right. Can I just say the last thing? You've got about 10,000 volcanoes under the oceans going off all day long. Okay. They're releasing massive amounts of CO2. So way more in comparison than what man is doing at all. But go ahead.
But there's something here that we're missing, because we're getting back to that CO2 causing the climate change. It's been recently proven, I can probably find some papers, that CO2 is not a warming gas. It's a cooling gas. It actually cools the atmosphere. So where's the warming coming in?
Again, we're talking about the weather when there's bullets being shot around, which is the actual pollution, killing people left, right, and center, more than all the wars of the world. And CO2 never killed anybody.
The warming leads to creation of more clouds, which creates more cooling, and that's how you get that cycled effect.
Right. So you're going to have people arguing, oh, it's caused more warming. No, it caused more cooling. No warming, no cooling, no rain, no sun, no rain. No, it's sunny. No, it's raining. No, it's sunny. No, it's cloudy. No, it's raining. It's all about the weather when people are dying right in front of our eyes and getting sick. People like me can't even get into town without getting nuked by a diesel vehicle. It's ridiculous. I know dozens of people in my same condition. They're highly sensitive. Chemical, environmentally sensitive because of their work, working with vehicles all their life. Suddenly they're toxic and can no longer work. It happens to people here regularly. I've talked to the head of the local area that's responsible for workmen's compensation, and now the cases are starting to roll in, and they're starting to recognize this problem and so on, and it permeates all these different industries. It's like huge, and now they're looking at all the health repercussions of the particulates that come from this burning. And now we have the technology to trace back those particulates right back to the source where they came from. And this is like being able to track weapons back to the weapons manufacturers and actually track the bullets back to the bullet manufacturers and find out who made them and make them responsible for their bullets, basically. And that's what's happening now in the world. And this is what's changing everything. And now we're finding that these companies are responsible for the health effects and the decimation of huge amounts of the population. And that is in the multi-hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars in health effects that would bankrupt the entire planet right now in terms of the entire oil industry and every industry associated with oil. That is what we're looking at. If it was admitted, the health effects that are going on right now and the utter destruction of man against man here. It's the worst tragedy and travesty of the entire last century. And it's right in front of our eyes and no one can recognize. Everybody talks about cancer, all this stuff about cancer, and don't realize it's coming from the stuff we're breathing. It's just, that's, one of my things. I kind of get on my high horse about this, but it's a big thing to me. I've been following this for a long time. And yes, toxic exhaust pipes, having exhaust pipes coming into the face of the person behind you. This is like a very, very bizarre idea to start with. But we're starting.
What has that got to do with the sun?
Right. So,
and this is why you're very into plasma technology, Rick.
That's why I'd like to get into the next slide here. I'm really excited. I think we can try to maybe
let's shift it back to our universe a little bit.
Maybe we've already talked about the next slide here somehow. Let's try to get into it.
Okay, there we go. So we radiate its fields out, and in interaction with itself, with the fields of itself, leads to creation of a planet. So why is it interaction with itself? Because in a sense, it's what's going out is coming back in that magnetosphere. Am I right? And so there's things going out and coming back in.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to the creation of the planet.
Right, and you have the fields from the universe, you have the fields from the galaxy, all interacting within that newly born sun, let's call it. Mm-hmm. And the fields would be pretty strong, I would say, and would lead to eddy currents within that magnetosphere, exactly the same way that it happens within our magnetosphere here when we get hit by CMEs and other space particles.
Or look at the big flares that come out of the sun. You know, you could see that that's where the matter levels, the surface of the sun is the matter level stuff that we can see. Underneath that is likely black because it absorbs the light, doesn't allow the light to shoot out the way it does in the plasma flames that come shooting up.
We also have multiple cores in the sun too, right? So there's not
the interaction of the different cores, and like you say, the field, the fluctuations in the fields and so on.
Well, just because we see a CME on the outside, what is going on the inside? When we look at the sun with different telescopes in different scientific instruments in different wavelengths, we see different things. We see coronal holes on the sun, which are the points on the surface that are not the right strength to create the barrier, let's call it, and they have a very high environmental field strength, let's call it, because it spews the solar wind out of the coronal holes very fast. You have a different positive and negative aspect of those coronal holes as well, which again are the part of a cycle with the sun when it flips its poles every 11 years. So you have a major dynamism inside of the sun as well, coupled with the fact that it's also bringing the fields in from the outside, from the galaxy. I can see nothing but a fully dynamic system within the solar system itself, creating eddy currents, creating the plasma, the initial aspects of the plasma to have that gravitational force to create create the dust that settles on the top of this planet, being created from the differences in the strength that we are now compared to the sun. Again, this happens throughout the entire solar system, and Mr. Keshe has described how the fields are radiated out from the sun, creating the planets anywhere in that space, mostly on the outside, and then bring them back into the center with the gravitational aspect of the fields. So I would say it's created everywhere because of the full dynamic system that we are in.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned created anywhere. What if the Earth didn't come from the sun? What if it came from another planet? Like, for example, when you look at Jupiter being very large, very, very large compared to the sun. And if specifically, there's something I ran into lately I hadn't thought of before, but something you might consider is if you look at the eye of Jupiter, it's sort of an eye-shaped swirling mass that's in Jupiter, and Jupiter is made of basically hydrogen and helium. It is a gaseous planet, but they're under a very heavy gravitational pull and so on. So it has these amazing vortexes that last for thousands or even millions of years and so on. And this eye in Jupiter is virtually identical to what's called the Eye of Horus in the Egyptian symbols. It's a symbol of protection and power and so on. And there is some myths or some possible science, but at least some mythology behind the idea that the Earth actually came from Jupiter, and that's our roots are in the eye of Jupiter, that it gave birth to the Earth. And if you look at the eye of Jupiter, the Earth will actually fit very well inside of it, inside of its core. Could easily have been.
Well, that is now.
Bit
Before
out.
it was not like that. It was way bigger. It has its own cycle as well. So it goes. The eye goes away and comes back, and goes away and comes back. So did that happen at the time of when the Earth was born? Can't say so. Can't say not. However, I could see. Well, let's just use this as a hypothetical situation where Jupiter was created first, let's say in the solar system. From the eddy currents between the Jupiter and the sun, we could have been created from that, which is, I don't see why not. There's many different possibilities. So yes, Jupiter could definitely have had a play in the creation of the Earth, not necessarily creation of like a moon around the Earth and then around the Jupiter and then ejected from Jupiter, but I'm talking in terms of the way that it's created in terms of its own orbit. But Jupiter would definitely, I would say, have an effect on the eddy currents of the sun during the creation of any planet.
We could have also been very similar to Jupiter in much bigger size and having much lighter element.
Exactly.
Because that's what's further out. And if you look, I don't know if any of you have ever had a look, they sometimes put on YouTube those mountains that are flat at the top. And when they look at them, they actually look like fossilized tree trunks. It's an absolute mind bender. And maybe they were actually giant fossilized trees.
Well, that's, I mean, Mr. Keshe has again talked about this before, how the cycle of the solar system is the planets move in and they start at the furthest distance, which is let's call it
the hydrogen helium gas or whatever.
Dense solar fields, I guess, and allowing the increase in the size of the plasma of the planet. As it moves further in, it becomes that rocky body because it has been compressed by the fields of the sun, and now it has to take a different form. So again, just like we were talking again earlier about how the sun can go through a transition point in its cycle through the galaxy, a planet could definitely have a transition point between positions in the solar system. We have a big ring, let's call it, of rocks, of asteroids in between Mars and Jupiter. Why is it there? Was it another planet? Is it now a planet that's going to form, and that's how it's created? That gas goes into a circular orbit like a ring and forms rocks and then comes back together and forms a planet? Does that mean the planet was destroyed? Probably not.
Also, Vincent, you remind me also the guns. The size of the guns are different. What you explained, Keshe, a few public teaching ago, where the zinc zinc oxide is different size than the CO2 and the CH3. So even in the guns, you have the size that it's different. Like the planets are different size.
Right, and I think we've even had somebody that has taken one form of GANs and had it, I don't know what actually happened, but we seen it, the way he explained it was that it was created from the GANs and turned into a different GANs, right? That was Alex. That was a couple years ago at least, where he had a reactor system that was creating different matters. When the GANs has just like the planets have the different densities of the fields around it, it will change to a different state, right? That's what we have just determined. So could that not happen in the GANs as well? I don't see why not.
Everything's determined by the environment that it's in, how it expresses itself.
That's right. So what if we have a reactor system that has a dynamic environment, which is exactly what Mr. Keshe has created before with the nuclear materials. He created a dynamic environment that he was able to change the environment very quickly. So that was turned into a different state or changed a state very quickly. We have a more powerful system because it's more flexible. We just have to learn how to change that dynamic state and work with it as we need it. We already have all the tools. We know that the different ganses have different field effects, which of course different densities, let's call it, different energy or field densities. So we have to be able to change those densities, allow that flow between them. And even in this last Knowledge Seekers workshop, where Mr. Keshe was talking about the fields coming head on, and we, in terms of what happens, it finds its own balance. So it changes its state in that aspect, because we are changing the density of the fields.
Thanks, Vince. I think we need to trundle along because, yeah, we're getting quite late in the teaching, but we'll carry on and try and get to the end. Hopefully.
But as we can see, I mean, at every point in this, we're going back to the same thing over and over again. We're looking at different levels and going, it's all the same.
And we made it through like 3 slides already.
Wow. That's actually pretty good progress for us.
Remind me the Russian doll all the time. Or like when they say the ball into ball into ball, like this.
Or peeling the onion.
That's a great example. And it's true. It's a penetration, you might say, to get to the next level. And it requires some work and interchange with each other in order to remind each other to how to get to the next level of and elevate. It's all an elevation process. Part of that is elevating ourselves. Part of it is elevating the whole space, or the whole through our focus on these images that we see here.
And one thing, Rick, please, anyone want to bring example from Mr. Keshe teaching.
Or we'll bring examples from your own life as well.
Practical things too.
But this practical things or life, this is all depending in matter state. And we are going also, when we're thinking about it, we are going back to the matter state. But if you bring,
but it has to be explained, Bilal.
Yes.
You know, people need to understand it in all aspects, and sometimes they have to go from the physical to the non-tangible. You know, you have to start somewhere. This stuff is also so difficult for a lot of people to comprehend.
You are totally correct. But what the main thing here, that we need to give people little bit opening of minds, in even if it is for them imagination. This is the thing, because everything is there in the Mr. Keshe teaching, and it's to them to open their minds, you know, to catch.
Yeah. Okay, so in the interaction of the fields of the Earth with its environment and cooling, and exchange with the strength of other things, in the environment of the space of the solar system, leads to the creation of man, cell, and matter state. So now we're actually going into a even less energetic. I don't know if it's the cooling and the exchange of strengths with other things in that planetary environment. But again, with the solar system also interacting. So yes, it's just the next stage again in the division still, in a way, or the creation. Is it going backwards or forwards, in or out? I'm not quite sure. Probably both. Or am I rambling?
What was your question there about, how did that go at your last line there, that you had sort of a...
Are we going, is it going out or in? You know, every time we see the energy, because it seems to be flowing out and then back in again, because whether it's the sun or whatever it is at the center, it flows out and then back in. And with this,
right.
Again,
so which one would you like to focus on, the ingoing or the outgoing?
I think it's all simultaneous. So
well, that's right. But we do, as humans, tend to focus on sort of one or the other. We go for the matter state, or we go for the soul, and it's sort of the ingoing and the outgoing, or something, you know, the gravitational and the magnetical. You can focus on the gravitational, or you can focus on the magnetical. Which one would you like to focus on? This is the same loaded question as we were talking about earlier. Which one would you like to focus on, the magnetical or the gravitational?
Take the CO2 kit.
Question, because there's always, when there's magnetical, there's always some gravitational. When there's gravitational, there's always some magnetical. You cannot separate them. The maggrav's a maggrav, you cannot separate them. And we can talk about them, the magnetical and the gravitational, but that is an effort to separate a field which is a combined field that already has its maggrav field. And we, as sciencey kind of people, we like to define things and separate and divide and so on. But that is a loaded question. Is it magnetical or gravitational? It depends on which perspective. It's kind of like, is the spiral clockwise or counterclockwise? Well, it depends if you're looking at the face of the clock or from behind the clock to start with, or if you're looking at the coil from the top down or from the bottom up. And all these questions come in, and every time we come into that question, are the coils supposed to be wound clockwise or counterclockwise? My mind just starts to fry because we talked about it for hours on end. Because again, it's a loaded question because it depends on perspective.
Shall we move forward? Because actually we're just going smaller from what we started with originally. So these are all the same concepts. Okay, so, and that itself, in coming together and slowing down in certain ways, as we call, leads to another sun we call the soul of the man. This is the truth about the life and creation of the man. So this was, as Mr. Keshe explained, how in the womb, the physical part starts creating a dynamic field. And within that dynamic field, other rays obviously are pulled in, and the soul is created from that matter state. And that is the sort of another cycle again. So should we slowly shift on? Flint, do you want to move it slightly? Okay, there we go. But if the soul of the man can understand and absorb and be correct with its conduct, he can become the strength of the field and carry the strength of the field of the planet, which came to his creation. So to me, here comes, you know, are we now rebuilding again? We're building by doing this, or we're not. We're coming together, we're absorbing and we're building.
Also for me, it means also, you know, when Keshe said you can decide if draw your life by follow your soul, non-physical soul, or you can decide to drive your life from the physical soul. So for me also this means that if we correct conduct, when you're being correct, he can become the strength of the fields. So I think it's and carrying the strength of the fields of the planet, which came to his creation. So it's like you become by carrying your life, by thinking from the no physical soul point of view, you get closer to the creator and the field of the sun. So you become more like Rick said just now, depend where you look at it, where you look the things from, which perspective. So if you follow the soul, no physical soul in your conduct in life, then therefore you become more close to the sun, more close to the creator, and then so on. Yeah, I don't know if I explain myself or not.
Right. So the correct conduct allows you to increase your strength of the physicality as well as the soul, because you're following the correct conduct and you're able to receive more fields from the sun. Because if you stay in the matter aspect of the soul, then you will receive the fields of the earth, which again are a filtered version of the fields compared to what you would receive or what the earth receives from the sun. And the sun provides a great deal of field strength beyond of what we can even imagine right now.
Yes, exactly. So when Keshe drew the picture of the human being, when he drew the head, that it's the head, and he make the picture of the human being with the head and the lines, and then inside he created the soul. So he make another circle, and then inside the circle he drew another human being. And I think like if you have a good conduct, if you conduct your life from non-physical, from the non-physical soul, it's mean that the soul inside us, the dot that inside our brain, it becomes stronger, so it can expand. So then it can expand so much that the physical soul is actually is no more outside, and the non-physical soul is inside. But as the inside, not physical soul expand because because you decided to guide in your life from non-physical soul, so you're feeding.
There's an easier word for that, Stefania.
Yeah, so it's become bigger.
The emotion, because that is what is driving that correctness. Mm-hmm. If you are not correct, your emotion will be completely different. And that difference in emotion will lead to the incompatibility, let's call it, of the strengths of the fields that are outside. So by acting correct, you know that you're correct. You're listening to your soul. You are able to have that perfect state of emotion, and that emotion of what allows those fields to come in.
Yes, so they expand, and now so if you imagine, like I said, originally Keshe drew the physical soul, and you draw the dot inside the head that it's non-physical soul. Then as you have a good conduct and you live in by the non-physical soul, the physical soul strength get bigger and expand, and then you have the non-physical soul on the outer and the physical soul in inner part. I don't know if I explain what I want to say, but then I think
you can feel more. You can feel more because you can feel outside of yourself. That's what I would say. When you allow that to happen, your non-physical soul can expand outside the body. Of course, that's not something we would see in terms of our physical eyes, but we feel more. We can include the energies or the fields of the different states or the different transitions through that higher soul, because it's a different strength. And now, instead of having the matter soul blocking it, like the Earth is right now, with our the magnetosphere, with the plasma that comes from the Earth, filters the energies from the sun, with having the field strength outside of us, we're able to also gather that field strength and have that direct link, let's call it, to our soul.
Yeah, I think that one, it's when the non-physical soul become bigger than the physical soul, I think that it's when we have the elevation of the soul. This is my understanding. But yeah, I agree with you.
I agree with you too.
You too as well.
I agree with you three.
Let's go a little bit further. I don't know if we're going to manage the whole thing today because it's already 3 hours. But,
Is it an hour per minute? Is that how far we're going?
Hour per slide, I think.
I think we must entice people to become a private student, because maybe the private students can carry on with us in the afternoon.
This is a 10-part public series, probably.
Okay, so if the soul can understand with the same process, he can interact, can become, correct, and absorb with itself the totality of the strength of what it needs, and he shall become the sun. So that's exactly what you guys just said. Let's go one more slide forward.
Sorry, what'd you say there, Vince?
It's just that instant communication. It happened as soon as we were talking about it.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. I missed the communication, but
then the same soul has the energy, and it can absorb within the solar system, within the galaxy, and shall become the center of the universe. So we're just going back now. We're going back to the stronger and stronger, and can absorb from the stronger and stronger.
He lays that out very clearly, the magnetical and the gravitational aspect of it, depending on where you're looking from. Sorry.
Okay, let's go a little bit further. There we go. On the earth, we call it the rain. We come from and we go back to. Pretty self-explanatory there. In the solar system, we call it planetary system. We come from the rays, we become the planet, and we go back to the mother. Here we go. We always go back to where we were created from. And that's the point, I suppose. The mother can be the sun, the galaxy, or the center of the universe. Shall we go a little bit further? So the same thing happens with the galaxies, with the solar systems, which they get absorbed back in and they're chewed up back into the universe. So yes, everything goes out from and comes back to, just as we've been saying all along.
And didn't Mr. Keshe indicate in 2015, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we had 2 years on the minimum side and 30 years on the maximum side before this planet gets pulled into the sun. Am I mistaken on that? I mean, nobody's going to feel anything, I thought he said. But this, as it happens millions of times per day or per week in the trillions of the universes that exist. Am I misunderstanding?
I think it was a slightly different thing about how a different solar system is coming into this one. But yeah.
That was the first teaching in 2015 that's up in the private teachings, I think.
I think it's out on the other teachings as well. Right, one more slide, then we are going to have to call it a day, or you guys can carry on without me because it's now very past my bedtime. And it is 3 hours. So the courses of existence in the universe is the same. It doesn't matter on what exchange or what extent. And so, yes, I think that is actually a really good slide to end on, because really what we've been discussing is the same as above, so below, and everything goes out and comes back to the creator. It doesn't matter what size or what sun it is, whether it's the galaxy, the universe, the soul of the man, we're all the same. And I'm sure that the guys can carry on with the private teaching later. They can carry on with this if they like, Flint. I'm sure they might want to, because I know we needed something to discuss in the soul teaching this afternoon.
Yes. So we'll call it quits for this session then.
Yeah, because it is over 3 hours already. And we usually like to stick to shorter time even. So we've gone quite long. I didn't realize my 17-minute film was going to end up that we could discuss it for maybe weeks.
Thank you, Lisa, for the videos. It was great to hear Mr. Keshe's words. It was very nicely put together video.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we can maybe put it up as well as a separate thing that people can download and really have a good look at. Mm-hmm. We should be able to manage to do some translations over the holiday period. Maybe when we've got a bit of free time, we can look at doing some translations. Thank you, everybody. Yes. That was a great discussion.
Could we continue this next time that we do the plasma?
I think this is the last time for exploring plasma science. Is that right?
Oh, really? The last.
This is the last one. So I sort of wanted to finish it with a bang, but I didn't know it was going to be such a long bang. Mm-hmm. But yes, but I'm sure we can, in the private classes, we can chat about this again. I know there's a soul teaching this afternoon, and I'm sure one can put it in there too.
Yes, correct. We can continue it this afternoon here at Central European Time.
Thanks, everybody. That was really great.
What are there any plans for next semester for some public teachings in plasma?
No, we haven't set anything yet, but we'll let people know if we are going to.
Okay. Well, I certainly do want to thank you all for joining us today. And again, these recordings are all put up on YouTube, Facebook, and live stream, so they are available for watching at a later date. This has been the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute public teaching for Monday, March 26, 2018, with Lisa McDonald and Exploring Plasma Science, Part 7. Coming up, our next public teaching is tomorrow afternoon. It'll be 4 p.m. Central European Time. The 33rd One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace public meeting. So please join us then on the same channel. Till then, have a great rest of your day, afternoon, or evening, and we'll see you then. Bye for now.
I think we need to change the hour, because here in Europe they change it to summer time.
Yeah, CEST is now in effect for European. So, and for those countries that did do their daylight savings time change, be sure to look up on, we actually use the site worldtimebuddy.com. Put in your locations, you want to compare times, and you'll never be late for meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't just put it in Google like I did and Google it.
Yeah.
It gave me false information.
Imagine that from Google. Wow.
Yeah, well, it worked for the last 20 times in a row, but for today it didn't for some reason.
Yeah, worldtimebuddy.com is a wonderful site to, you can put in up to 4 cities for free. They do have a subscription thing, but you can always compare different time zones.
Okay, thank you, Flint. That's great.
So, yes. Okay, we'll see you on our next public teaching coming up tomorrow afternoon. Bye for now.